And now back to Around the Kit with Joe Gansas.
Guys, we are back, 646-787-8027. I see my first guest of the evening on the line, and I am pumped up. I want to go back 24 years for this great track of Tony McAlpine's release, Madness. This is called Muffin Bandits with the great Glen Sobel on drums.
And now back to Around the Kit with Joe Gansas.
Guys, we are back, 646-787-8027. What a tremendous track from my first guest this evening. It gives me great pleasure to welcome to Around the Kit the tremendous Glen Sobel. Glen, Joe Gansas, Around the Kit. How are you, brother?
What's up, Joe? How you doing, Joe? You are giving me some serious flashbacks and memories, man. That track, cool. I was like air drumming to myself just listening to it.
Oh, man, what a great track. Thank you, brother, first of all, for giving me some of your time today.
No problem, man. No problem. We are in the middle of tour still. We're on a stop in Little Rock, Arkansas. Today we got a show tonight. Last night was Birmingham, Alabama. We're on the move. We got a lot of shows this year with Alice Cooper.
Glen, life is good, huh, brother? Life is good.
It's going good, man. I mean, the road has its challenges, and we got to stay healthy. And
yes,
things are good with Alice. He's just keeping on going. We're booked through December, so we're happy about that. He's a great employer, super cool boss. So, yeah, no complaints.
Guys, we're talking to the tremendous Glen Sobel today. Glen, I want to go back a little bit. I started playing drums at 13, I think 11 years old, if I'm correct. We start gaining interest in drums. What was going on in L.A. back then? 11-year-old Glen Sobel. What was the main attribute to want to just hit things with sticks?
Back then I'd say it was a combination of three things. It was Rush, Led Zeppelin, and the guy across the street had drums.
Nice.
It was those three things. Yeah, and that made me want to hit things with sticks. Yeah, I was into Rush before I was a drummer, and I remember putting on, like, you know, their live records. They had, what was it called, All the World's a Stage. You know,
Yes.
They had a lot of crowd noise on there. Yeah, a lot of crowd noise, so I'd turn over these buckets and these metal trash cans, and I had a couple of bamboo sticks, and I'd pretend to play along, and then you hear that crowd. It's like, oh, they're cheering for me, you know, and my parents saw that. They knew. They saw the writing on the wall.
Absolutely. But, you know, when I was younger, I was into baseball before drums, and I would come home and I would go outside and I would make believe I was Johnny Bench in the ninth inning, just hitting rocks across the street. Were those times special, even hitting the buckets and the pots and pans? Are those, you know, times embedded in your head that you say, wow, those were really cool times in my early upbringing, you know, that I wanted to do this?
Oh, of course. Yeah, man. I remember it like it was yesterday. You know, there was another kid that lived across the street, and his older brother had Rush. He had Exit Stage left. We were playing basketball in the front on the driveway, and the window was open to the living room, and his older brother was there. He's like, check it out, man. This dude does a drum solo. It's so cool. And I heard that. I was like, wow, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard. Maybe I want to be a drummer, you know. I mean, this is such a typical story for so many people that would be, you know, of a certain age. I know that going back more for most people, they say, well, when I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, I knew I wanted to pick up a guitar or play drums. It was just like this overnight explosion. So, yeah, for my generation, it was more the classic rock like Rush and, of course, Zeppelin, Bonham. You know, I got the first Zeppelin I got was Song Remains the Same, the soundtrack to the movie. I always like getting the live things first because you're getting kind of a greatest hits, plus there's usually a drum solo. But then I go from there and get the studio records.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What was so special to a Glen Sobel about Zeppelin 4? I know you really like that album.
Yeah, Zeppelin 4. Look, every song is a staple of FM rock radio, classic rock. So you pretty much heard the whole thing if you listen to classic rock. Something as heavy as When the Levee Breaks, that's like the quintessential huge rock beat. It's like the sound check beat, you know. Drummers get in there in a big room and things sound huge. You want to play that, you know. It's like you can't not play that. If you're on a wide open sounding kit, you know, it's just begging for a groove like that. And that's like sort of the essence of what rock should feel like. You know, that's a thing that can't necessarily be taught. You have to hear it and absorb it somehow. And that record best exemplifies a rock vibe and attitude in so many ways, in so many different feels. You know, you've got Black Dog, you've got a lot of songs on there that have a lot of challenges rhythmically, but the vibe is there.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. We're talking to the tremendous Glen Sobel today, 646-787-8027. Later on, one of my previous guests last week, one of my favorite drummers of all time, take me back to, 18-year-old, learning from this great Greg Bissonette, and what his role in your early playing was. Even now, Glenn, do you still try to convey things that you might have learned from this tremendous drummer?
Oh, of course, yeah. Greg, I happened to meet him one day. He lived in the area. I'm born and raised from L.A., and so he was living in L.A., in West San Fernando Valley, and he was giving lessons. He was doing group lessons, like 2, 3, 4 guys at a time. And, yeah, I was 18. Me and one of my best friends, we were doing lessons every Saturday, and it just happened that he was doing the lessons at this drum tech's house, this guy Jay Rubin. He's teched for Jethro Tull and a lot of bands for a lot of years. And my friend and I, we were going to Cal State Northridge, literally living right across the street from this guy Jay Rubin's house. And so Saturday mornings, we would drive across the street because we were probably hungover from a party the night before. We lived in the dorms, and we'd do a lesson with Greg, and it was invaluable. It was everything. It was, what happens on a recording session, charting things out, working on Latin, songo, working on licks, ideas. There were 2 drum sets set up, and studied with him. It was probably about a year and a half that we were doing that, and then Greg was actually the guy who recommended me to Tony McAlpine's manager. The song you played at the beginning of this, that's the first record I ever did. The first real record was that. Yeah, and one day Greg called me and said, "Do you know who Tony McAlpine is?" I said, "Of course. I've got some of the records." He said, "Well, start working on this stuff because I recommended you to his manager." So that's how the career got kicked off, thanks to Greg.
Yeah, absolutely. And my next question is, your first big break, Tony McAlpine, what did you learn working with this virtuoso Glen do for your confidence as a young drummer?
Well, that's exactly it. You know, it did give me a boost of confidence. That record that we did, it's still one of my favorite recordings that I've ever played on. And I still get people, they come up, they mention it, or they might even have the CD they want me to sign. It did give me that confidence because we only rehearsed 3 or 4 evenings for that record. And so I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? Can I do this? You know, only rehearsing in such a short time. And there were demos with some drum machine programming, and some of it was specific, some of it was real general, like, you know, kind of fill in the blank and do your own thing here. But no, once we got in the studio, I saw, I'm like, okay, yeah, I can do this. Good, yeah, we're getting it all done. And so that was a big confidence booster, and just the fact that Tony believed in me that I could do that, sure, it meant the world.
Yes, brother, and you got to say to yourself, you know what? Wow, I'm 18, 19 years old, or whatever it is. I can do this. You know, maybe I have a future in this, and that's a good confidence booster for yourself. You know, brother.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And so the thing was with that gig, that record you played. I mean, man, I'm like seriously showing my age here, but yeah, it came out in the early mid '90s.
93.
When I did that, I was 20. Yeah, 2021 when I did that.
Yeah,
22 almost maybe, and man, that was right when grunge was coming out, and it really it killed shred and, well, hair metal, of course, too. It kind of erased the slate in a way. So, you know, the timing of it, although I loved the record, it was hard to get out and do a tour or anything. I was just chomping at the bit to do a tour. But it did lead to other similar gigs with other, I guess what you call shred type of guitar players. But I've always said in the 90s, shred was dead to an extent, maybe in America most of all. It made a comeback for sure. But yeah, that was it was a weird time.
Just think of all the drummers he's had: Dean Castronova, Steve Smith, Mike Turan. They've all worked with him, and it has to, you know, say to Glen Sobel, you know, you're part of that family too. You know, it's a good feeling, brother.
Yeah, well, you know, a guy like Steve Smith, I would say he's one of my biggest influences. I talked about Zeppelin and Rush. I'd say Journey is in there too. I was listening to them before I was a drummer, and of course, love Steve Smith. And they had this concert on television that I recorded on VHS. They've since put it out as like a DVD that you could probably see clips of on YouTube now. But it was them in the early '80s on the Escape tour. And Steve Smith does a drum solo. Man, I wore out that VHS cassette. And then, of course, years later, I got into Steve Smith's jazz stuff with Vital Information and all those other records. Probably saw that group live at least 20 times. Smith is a huge influence, and so to be able to play some of his songs he did with McAlpine, that was a treat. Yeah,
absolutely, guys. We're talking to a tremendous Glen Sobel.
Of course, Dean Castronova, of course, another big influence. I was listening to a lot of those records that he did from the Shrapnel Records label. A lot of records like Cacophony and Marty Friedman. And, of course, McAlpine's Maximum Security. And then he was in Bad English. He was getting into more commercial-type gigs, which was a cool thing to see people from that label transition into getting bigger, more commercial, accessible-type gigs. You know, I saw that kind of path for myself. I didn't want to just be the guy that played with the shred guitar players. So you have to chart a course for yourself, and you may not exactly follow it, but it's good to have some sort of game plan, you know, short-term, long-term goals.
Yeah, Glenn, and you just mentioned, you know, now we're playing different genres of music, all drummers. How important, in your eyes, a young drummer listening right now, how important it is, would you say to them, to study different genres, to get into different kinds of music, you know, to learn everything?
Well, it depends. It's like, what do you want to be? I used to teach at Musicians Institute in Hollywood, I do private lessons with the students, and on the first day they'd come in, I'd ask the question, what do you see yourself doing in music? And that doesn't have to be just one thing, but what do you see for yourself? And if they say, well, I want to play with different people in recording sessions and tours, I say, well, in that case, yeah, it's really important that you appreciate and learn and like as many different genres as possible. But if their answer was more like, I want to be in a band, I love metal, and I want to do this, it's like, well, you can't force somebody to want to learn all those different styles. You have to like it.
Right.
So, for me, Greg Bissonette being a role model, he was doing all these styles. He was playing with David Lee Roth, but he was playing on a lot of LA fusion records. There's this classic record from saxophonist Brandon Fields that I have that Greg is on. That's from the 80s. He was doing Latin gigs, big band. It's like, yeah, that's the way to be, working and playing with a lot of different people. That's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Teacher at Musicians Institute in Hollywood. Did you always want to teach, Glenn, or something that just presented itself to you at the time?
I used to go to a lot of clinics in LA. Like I said, I was lucky enough to grow up in LA, and especially before YouTube and all that, there was always a lot of clinics going on, and I would go to every one I could. And I suppose just from going to that and watching guys break down what they do, it made me say, yeah, maybe I can do that one day. If I'm on a gig or doing something of significance, maybe I can teach and do these type of clinics. So sure, that had an effect, and I saw that as a possibility. It's another, of course, source. It's another source of income as well. But you have to like or love teaching. You can't just do it because it's the money. You gotta be into explaining and helping people and breaking it down. And yeah, I do enjoy it to this day. Yeah,
great stuff, brother. You've played with a lot of different artists in your career so far. Do you enjoy moving around a lot? Right now you're with Alice for a while. Do you enjoy moving around and playing with different artists, or do you like being in that one band, for a long period of time?
Well, the Alice gig has just been great. It's wonderful. It's been a blast. This is the 7th year. I love the gig, but I love coming home and doing some other, whatever it is. It could be any other type of gig. I have a regular Wednesday residency gig in Hollywood, and that is a different list of songs to learn every week. We all love that in that resident band. And so that's always a good way to stretch out into some other genres and some other songs. And there'll be other little tours I can get onto here and there. Last year I played a bit with Richie Sambora and Orianthi, and that was good to get out and play some classic Bon Jovi and some of their newer stuff. And I really do enjoy being able to step out of the Alice gig and play some other things, even if it's just locally playing at like the Baked Potato in LA, where there's more of an improvisational atmosphere. That's always a good time. That's complete opposite of Alice, where the show is like set in stone every night.
Yeah, absolutely. You've played with so many tremendous artists so far in your career. What has always been the main recipe for Glen Sobel when working on a project with somebody?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. The main recipe, I mean, look, if it's a new artist, come in, and I want to always exceed expectations. You got to do that. There's always going to be a certain amount of skepticism, even if someone is just a big name, huge name, legend, but they're coming in on a new gig. There's still going to be a certain feeling from people going, okay, do we have the right guy? Unless that person is so tried and proven. But I enjoy being able to come in and make everybody rest assured that, yes, they've got the right guy. I've done my homework. I know this stuff inside and out. That's an important part of the recipe. Just getting along, taking suggestions, leaving the ego on the side, especially if you're subbing, subbing last minute, whatever. People are sometimes nervous about that kind of thing. They don't rehearse a lot. That's something you find out. People hate rehearsing, especially if they've been playing their same songs for years. It's like they're bringing in a new person. They want that person to be up to speed as soon as possible. So that's important. You want to always surpass what people expect of you.
Absolutely. You know, I have so many young drummers listening to my show, and I think sometimes they get the wrong perspective on live playing. Talk to them about how important it is to always convey yourself, Glenn, the same way if you're playing to 10 people or 10,000 people. Why is it so important to always convey the same authority and energy every night?
Well, you should always play how you play. If there's a minimal amount of people in the venue, that doesn't mean you don't care. You always
Right.
want to care. And there's always that old saying, you never know who's watching, right? I mean, you could be playing some random club in, say, Hollywood, and nobody's there hardly. You know, there's more people on stage in the audience. But maybe there's
Right.
one person there that says, hey, you know, you sound great, and there's this one gig I think you might be good for. You should check this out. I mean, that's the Hollywood mentality. You know, it's like you never know who's there. But for anywhere in the world, you want to put on that show, and you want to give people their money's worth. They paid to come see you, and there's a lot of options of other things they could be doing nowadays, especially with all the entertainment options where you could just stay home.
Yeah.
But yeah, you want to give people what they came to see. You don't want to phone it in, ever. Not ever.
Yeah, you say phone it in. I think if we start phoning it in, Glenn, we'd be cheating ourselves, you know, brother, because, you know, we practice, we sweat, then we set up our stuff live, and then we have a big crowd or a small crowd. I think we'd be cheating ourselves, too, if we didn't give 100%.
Right, and, you know, there's a flip side to that. It's a weird psychological thing that I wish I could bottle it up. Yeah, I don't want people to take it the wrong way, but it's a funny thing. Maybe you can relate to this. Sometimes when you don't care too much, you play your best.
Yes.
If you don't, it's like you're not paying attention. You're not worried about what other people are thinking about when you're playing. You're just going to play and enjoy it, and you're not caring. So all of a sudden, all this great stuff comes out. Yeah, that could be in songs, a drum solo. Of course, overall, you do care. You want everything to groove and feel great. But it's funny how sometimes you catch yourself off guard where you're not, like, focused too hard, and you listen to a recording back. It's like, wow, we were really in it that night. That was really good. And we were just sort of goofing off and having a good time with it. You know, it's like there can go two ways, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you don't ever want to try too. You don't want to try too hard to do anything. If it sounds like you're trying, it's going to come off not like you want it to.
Yeah, I guess sometimes if you have no expectation, sometimes it might come off better. I know what you're saying. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
True.
You know, talk to me, Glenn, about the studio and the live element. Are they really different animals to you? Is it really a different concept, the live aspect and the studio aspect?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's similarities. You want to play with consistency, but in the studio, you are not putting on a performance for an audience. And I've noticed studio, a lot of the time, you do not need to play as hard as you're going to be playing live. In fact, when you back off a certain percentage, you're going to get more out of the drum and the cymbals. In the studio, you may be using some very different drums and cymbals, maybe thinner crashes. Maybe
Right.
You're using, a different snare for every track. You have to experiment. You could get a great performance, but then the engineer or producer goes, you know what? I'm not totally digging the snare. Let's change snares. So you got to start all over again. You're really thinking about sound and texture. Of course, live, you want your drums to be proper for the gig and tuned great, but you're not switching snares between every song and switching gear out. The studio is microscopic, and live, you're putting on a show, especially something like Alice Cooper, where they're running all over the stage, the guitar players, and I'm doing the more showy aspect of playing, but I am playing songs to a click sometimes live, some of the songs in the set, for consistency's sake. So that's a similarity to the studio.
Yeah.
So you got to think about studio as more restraint, and you're maybe not going to be playing as many notes live, that people call the producer the reducer, because maybe he's reducing a lot of your parts to be less busy, but you really have to think about the finished product. Live, you're performing a finished product. The studio, you may not see that vision because you haven't even heard the vocal melody yet and what it's going to be.
Yeah, absolutely, but absolutely. Guys, talking to tremendous Glen Sobel. He's been so nice to give me some time today. You know, Glenn, I was looking for you and studying you. I'm not sure if you had it yet. If you did, please correct me. That game changer, that one break, was it the McAlpine? I'm not sure it was. If there was that one game changer, that one vital point yet, you know, what was it? Or maybe it wasn't yet, you know?
McAlpine, it opened a door to doing pro gigs, no doubt. You know, you get the one thing, and sure, it can be a snowball effect and lead to other gigs, but I wouldn't say that was like the huge game changer. Like I said, At the time, it was the 90s. It was hard to get out on tour with that genre of music. But no, my career, it was kind of a gentle upward slope, you know, and there were some definite highs. You know, I had a record deal with the band Beautiful Creatures. We were on Warner Brothers, signed to a major label in 2001, and that was the big machine. That was it. You know, that was a big break, and we were out doing Ozfest, and the record had a huge budget, and things were great for a little while, and then, you know, typical story, a new CEO took over the label and wanted to change things, which include dropping our asses from the label. Then, you know, you pick yourself up, you regroup, and you move on to the next gig. It wasn't until probably getting with Alice that there really was like a larger thing that would put me on the radar in the way that you're referring to, you know? There was a lot of other gigs along the way, playing with Italy's biggest rock star, Vasco Rossi, but that was Italy. You know, nobody knows who he is in America for the most part. But, Alice really kind of tied together, connected a lot of dots for people, you know, if they wanted to go back and check previous gigs that I'd done.
Well, sure. You know, it does. It has somebody like a Tommy Lee say, you know what? Let me call up Glen Sobel. I need him to fill in for me. How was that experience? You know, filling in for that legendary band. You know, was that something that you really, you know, and loved and entertained?
That was a crazy week. That was an amazing week. There's no two ways to put that. That was just amazing. I'm not going to act all coy and be like, yeah, it was cool. No, it was freaking crazy. It was like in the afternoon, I was in my hotel room, just like I am right now, and I got a call about 12:30 from their production manager, a guy I've known for years. He used to be a guitar tech on the Marilyn Manson gig, but he really moved up in the world. He was production manager for Motley Crue, and so he's calling me saying, hey, Tommy Lee, he hurt himself. Can you fill in? Can you play the show tonight? Because we were on tour. It was Motley's farewell tour. It was Motley and Alice Cooper together. So here's Robert Long calling me, the production manager. He mentions what's going on, and first thing I say is like, all right, who's messing with me? What's going on? I thought it was a joke because I've known this guy, you know, a long time. No, he assured me it was real. I said, okay, all right, get me a runner, a person to get me down to the venue, have someone pick up a music stand with a light to put above it, and have their sound guy, Adam, have him get me a thumb drive with the entire show on it. I knew they had been recording shows here and there. Get me that. I need to sit in the production office at the venue and chart things out. Okay, we're going back to stuff I learned from Greg Bissonette, making cheat sheets. I've been doing this for years, and so it keeps me working. Now, you know, you talked about confidence earlier. That gig I did in Italy, Vasco Rossi, he's their biggest guy there. He's like Bruce Springsteen times 10. And his drummer at the time, Matt Logg, a tremendous drummer, he had an injury. And so on 3 days' notice, I flew out to Italy, and I had a couple days before I was leaving, so I was up for 2 days straight charting out 25 songs I had never heard before, sung in Italian. We got to rehearse a couple days, and here I am on the island of Sardinia playing for 40,000 people, and I've got charts up there, and it was a crazy experience. But that right there, if that hadn't happened, then the Motley Crue thing would have been a little bit more intimidating. But I got that call, and I'm like, I could do this. You know, I've done this before, and this is Motley Crue. I grew up listening to these guys, and we've been on tour with them for a while. I'm hearing the show. I still made cheat sheets for every song. It doesn't care. I don't care how well you think you know it. Just make the cheat sheet so you have the structure, at least, written down in front of you. Plus, there's bombs going off next to the drum set. Nikki Sixx has got his flamethrower bass on Shout at the Devil. You know, there's all these pyro cues. And so, you know, half of me was going, all right, this is going to go better than they think it is. Because, you know, I'm the nerd that reads music. Nikki might have known that. I had worked with Nikki Sixx before with 6 a.m. on short notice. But the rest of them, I'm thinking it's going to go well. But the other half of me is like, oh, my God, what am I getting myself into again? I can't train wreck Motley Crue in front of 10,000 people. Oh, my God, you know. So I was just determined to put on, like, a good first show. I didn't know how many it was going to be. It ended up being a week of shows.
Wow.
But yeah, we got over that first show, and it was great. They run tracks and everything because it's synced up with the lighting. So every song is with a click track, which helps when you're filling in. You don't have to guess the tempo. And it was crazy how they were so like lax about the whole thing. I didn't sound check with them. I didn't even play with them until the show. All I did was go up there and just check my ears. Check the in-ear monitors to make sure I could hear their tracks, the click track, you know. And I just played along a little bit. Just, I used my kit, Tommy's tech and my tech. They'd scale down my drums between the Alice set and the Crew set just to one rack, like a 13 and then 16, 18 floor, kept the two kicks. Right. Took away everything on the left side so we could put a music stand there. And, yeah, it was like, all right, go. And, yeah, like I said, it was crazy. And Tommy was able to talk to me in my in-ear monitor. Wow. To be able to cue me, but eventually I think he saw that I had it. You know, he didn't need to cue me as much. I had this music stand there, and I wasn't trying to do my thing. I was trying to do his thing. When you're subbing, the best compliment you can get is that they forget you're there. You don't want to showboat in those situations. Yeah. So it went great, and we did that week of shows, and it was one of those things. You know, my best friends to this day is my band from high school. That, you know, we played backyard parties, we played our first clubs in Hollywood. So of course, I'm texting my best friend Dan. I'm like, "You're not going to believe what's happening tonight. This is nuts." You know, I mean, we used to play Smoking in the Boys' Room and Wild Side at backyard parties, and you know. It was just one of those moments. There's been a lot of moments like that where I've played with guys we grew up listening to, but that was the craziest. Yeah. Guys, we're talking to the tremendous Glen Sobel. Glen, during that conversation you just gave me, you mentioned click tracks, and you say, oh, yeah, it was cool, you know. But a lot of drummers, even on my show, even well-named drummers, I won't mention names, they're not too happy or even comfortable with click tracks. Talk to me once again to the young drummers today. How important is maybe to even practice, you know, and get accustomed to the click? Well, being a teacher, you know, I tell students you got to do that every day. There's no two ways about it. Now it could go the other way where drummers don't feel confident playing without a click. I've seen that happen too. But no, you need to do it every day, and you have to work on the full spectrum of tempos. It's not all about fast and faster. The slow stuff is what's going to be the hardest, especially studio. You're playing a ballad or even like a mid-tempo song that's got some syncopation. That's what's made a lot of drummers just choke. You know, they can't handle being able to be relaxed enough but play with that intensity with the click. You've got to do it every day. You got to practice those slow tempos. There's a lot of exercises. You could put it on, you know, something below 60 BPM, but play double time, triple time to that click. You've got to be comfortable with it. And there's just so many acts out there now that we've all seen. We've seen them on TV and live, pop, rock, metal, where the drummer is playing to a click. It may be obvious or it may be not be obvious, but it's essential. You got to be able to do it, and you got to be able to play without it as well. Like I said, it can't be a crutch. But I'll tell you, on the Alice gig, sometimes I use it just to start a song. Poison, the song, it does not work with a click. The chorus needs to push forward just a little bit. You know, it could be a click or two, And then the second verse, it kind of calms back down a click or two. But I start it with a click. You know, my drum tech operates an Alesis drum machine to generate a click in the in-ear monitors. But a song like Feed My Frankenstein, the click works all the way through, and I'm fine with it. You know, I like that for consistency's sake. But some songs, it just doesn't work. And there's going to be some drummers from certain bands, and those bands have been together for decades, and they have their sound and their thing, and maybe that band doesn't need to be on a click, you know? Maybe it needs to breathe and move around. It's amazing how certain bands, they collectively have this sense of time between their brains, you know? It's like they move together. And if you were to suddenly put a click on that, it would kind of ruin the sound and the vibe.
Yeah.
Right.
Excellent, brother.
Not mentioning names, but yeah, there's definitely bands like that. It's, like it's so organic, it's not going to work.
Yeah, I hear that. Yes, absolutely. Then I got two more, and I can't thank you enough, brother. You know, you mentioned before Tommy Lee had an injury. You've had some problems with your neck. How's the neck these days? I know you had some troubles in the past, and does it worry you, brother, towards the future at all?
Well, it's just a little bit of a wake-up call, you know, when you realize you're not 18 anymore, and you got to do all the proper steps towards being able to keep a career and stay healthy, being able to work out even while on tour. You know, I'll go to the gym today at the hotel, get on the treadmill, maybe do some kind of weights. It's something that you've got to do. It's not a big party out here. Staying healthy when you've got, you know, 90, 100 dates booked in a year, that's important. The show is not going to stop if you get sick or you get an injury. You're either going to play through it or there's going to be a sub.
Right.
So, yeah, being able to work out, keep everything strong, and the cardio is important. The Alice gig, it's kind of punishing on a drummer sometimes because Alice does not talk between songs. He doesn't break the mystique. He doesn't break character. So it's boom, 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 one song into another. So that's where the stamina comes in. So it's important for me to be able to keep up with that. You know, I actually playing that Motley Crue gig for a week, people don't believe this when I say it. It was so much easier as far as the physical stress level. So much easier than an Alice gig because Vince Neil, he talks, you know, and then Mick Mars does a 5-minute guitar solo. Nikki was doing a 5 to 10 minute speech on how the band met. You know, I see other bands, you know, their singers talking. I'm like, wow, I'm jealous. Look at all that time to ever get some rest between. You know, you go to the gym, you're doing a workout, you do some bicep curls, you rest a minute or two, and then you do another set, and then you rest. But no, this is like one song into the next. So that's the biggest challenge on the Alice gig. You know, I got oxygen back there, an oxygen tank to breathe in some O2 between songs, and this is a common thing. Tommy Lee does it. We were at the same hotel the other day as the Def Leppard guys, and I was having lunch with Vivian Campbell and Rick Allen, their drummer, and Rick uses oxygen, same deal, you know. It's an athletic thing that we do. So, again, staying healthy, that's what it is. We are not partying our asses off out here.
You just mentioned somebody who gives me goosebumps, Rick Allen. How is that guy for motivation, brother, in our lives? Oh, my God.
Yeah, you know, this was the first time I had met Rick, was just 2 days ago.
Wow.
Really super nice guy. Vivian Campbell had introduced me. I play in Vivian's solo band in L.A.
Yeah.
It's been a while since we've played, but yeah, we just happened to be at the same hotel, and yeah, Rick is a super cool guy. He stayed in the band, you know, what more can you say? And has an amazing, elaborate electronic setup, and it's like the band didn't even think twice. It's like he's our drummer, and they sound amazing live, and they're still doing it, man. They've been together since, well, 35 years at least for them.
Yeah, just
yeah,
tremendous
and
stuff.
it was cool. That night, it was a night off. This is one of the cool things about being on the road. It was a night off, and all of us in the Alice band, we like sometimes to play side gigs in clubs or whatever. It's like the whole band minus Alice. So we had a gig booked at this place, the Nick in Birmingham, Alabama, on the night off. You know, crazy. We have a night off and we book a gig. But Leopard was staying at our hotel. We had Phil Collins come down and sing and play a few. And it was just packed, crazy little club in Birmingham, Alabama. Yeah, there's YouTube clips of that. And it's cool that everyone in the band, in the Alice band, we all like playing a lot of different things, and they all sing lead in their own band. So yeah, it's cool. It's a good group of people.
Yeah. Just tremendous stuff, brother. My last question is this. You've played with some great musicians in your career up to this point, and you've had a great career so far. What has Glen Sobel learned about Glen Sobel that you didn't know before playing with all these great musicians?
Oh, now you're getting deep on me here, huh? Okay. Well, yeah, right. No, hey, look, sometimes, I can tell you this, sometimes you don't know if you can do something until you do it.
Right.
That's not something I made up. I've heard people say that. But, yeah, I did learn that about myself. Sometimes you have to have some faith in yourself, and there are those little tests in life. And if you pass the test, yeah, it's going to boost your confidence. Confidence sometimes is everything. You can be overconfident. You can do that, but I've learned, I should speak for myself, I've learned to really pace myself and make sure that I do get enough rest. It's like, yeah, listen to what your mother told you. You do need to get enough nutrition. Make sure you eat breakfast and make sure you get enough rest and wear that jacket. It all sounds so simple, but we don't listen to those words sometimes. You really need to practice some common sense, and that's about as good of an answer as I could give you.
Yeah. Glen, I can't thank you enough, brother. I ask all my guests at the end of my interviews one last question, and it's an honest answer. Whatever you give me, I don't debate it. Glen Sobel, on a scale of 1 to 10, brother, how would you rate this interview, honestly?
Oh, well, look, I rated a 10 because you know what you're talking about here. With the internet nowadays, there's just all kinds of information you can find out about somebody in order to formulate some questions. And it's amazing how sometimes people just don't do that. They want you, the interviewee, to kind of take the reins and talk about your career starting from day one. But no, you do your research, and that's all I could ask of anybody in an interview is those important milestones, like the first record I ever played on, or other certain projects and bands. And yeah, wonderful, great job.
Glen Sobel, what do you got coming up? Everybody can check you guys out. Where are you going to be in a couple days?
Oh man, we've got a lot of tour dates this year. I mean, right now is Little Rock, Arkansas. We've got Nashville coming up, and the actual original Alice band members are going to join us for a few songs that night. That's going to be interesting. I'll be doing some clinics along the way coming up, working on booking some of those while I'm on tour. With Alice, we've got our European festival run. We've got a month of Deep Purple starting in August. Rock in Rio's coming up. We got Australia, New Zealand, Japan. We got a lot on our plate, and we're very, very lucky. Alice is just this machine, man. He does not stop. He's probably playing golf right now as I speak, and he's going to do the show tonight, and he'll do the meet and greet. He'll get on the bus and wake up tomorrow and he'll play golf again. And we're lucky that he likes to work, and so we got to keep up with him. There's a lot coming up, and you can always just check out the social media stuff for the upcoming clinics and whatever. And
great stuff for the Glen Sobel drums.
And if you're in LA, of course, one more thing. If you're in LA, of course, there's my gig, my residency every Wednesday at Lucky Strike in Hollywood. We've had some fantastic nights there with some great guests, where we're like the house band backing them up. We've got some really especially good things coming up, I think, in later May after I get back off the road. So, yeah, if you're in LA, stop by there.
Is that what you guys do, like every week, like a different artist?
Yeah, usually there's a couple of special guests. Some of the more notable ones in January, we had a night where we had like Nuno Betancourt, Steve Vai, Tom Morello. We've had Jackson Brown there, Sebastian Bach. It's a pretty spectacular night. But it's not always A-listers that we have there. I won't say that every week is that nuts. But, no, it's a really nice night of music, and that's the thing that's always there to promote, I guess, the residency.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. Glen Sobel, if you could describe drums in one word, brother, what is drums to Glen Sobel?
Life.
Oh, man. Glenn, I can't thank you enough, brother. I wanted to do this for a while, and you've been so busy. I cannot thank you enough. We will continue to follow you on your drumming journey through life, brother, and I say thank you from all of us at Around the Kit. You are a gentleman, bro, and just tremendous drummer. Thank you so much, man.
Hey, thanks so much, Joe. Thanks for staying on top of it. I know we've been talking for a while about getting this thing going. I'm glad we finally got it in.
All right, man. You have a great day. We'll see you guys. The great Glen Sobel. Thanks, brother.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, bye-bye. Guys, the great Glen Sobel. Check him out with Alice Cooper, just a tremendous drummer. He conveys himself always with authority, and he has a good time, and just a tremendous drummer. I've been wanting to get him for a long time. He's been so busy. It just goes to show you how in demand he's been. He's been busy with side projects and now playing with Alice. He's in great shape, and we wish him all the best. Guys, once again, thank you to the great Glen Sobel.